and welcome to today's webinar that is part of our Get Smarter series titled Identifying Use Cases for SmartIQ. My name's Paula Barker, and I am a Global Marketing Manager at Smart Communications. Before we get started, I want to review just a few housekeeping items. The session today is being recorded, and all of the registrants will receive access to the recording after the webinar. All of the attendee lines are muted. However, if you have a question anytime during the session, simply type your question into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to promptly answer your question. If we are unable to answer your question, we will be sure to follow up with you within 1 to 2 business days. If you need to refresh your screen at any time during the session, simply press F5 if you're on a PC or Command R if you're using a Mac. At this time, I will now turn it over to Sally Schulte, Senior Product Marketing Director at Smart Communications. Sally, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Paula, and thanks everybody for joining. Gina and I are really excited for today's topic on identifying use cases with SmartIQ. We've got a lot to cover, and we really hope that this will be interactive. We've got plenty of slides to go through, but please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat. We can talk through those as we're going along, and we can bring those up at the end of the session as well. As Paula mentioned, my name is Sally Schulte, and I lead the product marketing strategy for SmartIQ. And Gina, if you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Lacey, and I'm one of the directors on our professional services team in North America. I've been with Smart Communication for 6 years, and my main role is helping our customers get implemented with their SmartIQ forms. So very much looking forward to this conversation, and welcome to all of you.
Thanks, Gina. So quick look at the agenda for today. The bulk of the time is going to be walking through steps on how to identify suitable use cases for SmartIQ. Before we get to that, we'll spend roughly 5 minutes on just a few feature highlights that have been introduced into the product in the last roughly 12 months. And these are things that when Gina and I were sort of talking, we felt that they tied in really well to today's topic in terms of helping people identify use cases. After we do that, we'll walk through kind of some additional steps teams can take within your organization. We'll open it up to questions, and we'll finally wrap up with just a quick look at resources that are available to you. So starting out with the features that really relate to identifying use cases. The first feature we'll cover, for those of you that took a look at the April release or some of those quick start video guides, these hopefully look familiar. It's the new SmartIQ form sample library. And what this is these are verticalized use cases. So when you go in, you would say, well, I want to create a project, I want to open an existing project, or there's this new tile in the middle that says create from a sample. And you click on that, and it would open up, you'd see these tiles that you see on the screen here, and they are organized by vertical. And when you click on them, you see what you see here. There's a description of the use case, and then you see the initial steps that are involved in those forms. And if you say, oh, wow, you know, this is something that we do, I definitely think we should take a pass at this, you can simply import the project straight into your tenancy. And it's got everything that you will have seen in the form sample library. So that the purpose of this was really to help you and your teams ideate. I mean, it does help from a time to market standpoint as well, having some of those first pages already built and developed. But what we hope is that you'll go in and get ideas there. And we are actively building this out. We started with roughly 10 of these form samples. And we are adding new form samples every month. So encourage you to take a look at those, and there will be an opportunity later in the chat. You can do it now, but we would welcome your feedback as well. You know, what is something that as you kind of see the information today, you say, oh, you know what I'd love to see in that form sample library? I'd love X, Y, and Z. We would welcome that feedback. So please share that with us as we're going through the information today.
Yeah. And I will add that the form sample library is one of my favorite new features. It really gives your form designers a jump start on creating their own SmartIQ forms. And one of the great things about it, if you take a look at the forms, there's a lot of inspiration in there in how we configured and designed the forms. So there's a whole library that you can choose from, and each one of them illustrates some different design components. So it's really a great tool to help you get up and started. So another new feature that we have is a refreshed design UI. And if you're new to SmartIQ, the design UI is where your SmartIQ administrator go to create and maintain their SmartIQ forms. And this refreshed design UI was really put together for platform unification. So if you're one of our SmartCom users, you're going to notice that there's the same look and feel between using SmartCom and using SmartIQ. And this can help you in a couple of different ways. If you have the same resources that you want involved with both products, it's going to make it a little bit easier for your resources to get up and going with SmartIQ. But it also gives you a way to start looking at your smart communications that you're sending to your customer with like a new, fresh look. How can you use SmartIQ for your data capture on the front end that you can pass into SmartCom? We really want you to start thinking of our two products really as an extension of each other. And that's what the platform unification can help do. Also with this new design UI, it was really done based upon feedback that's been shared with us, because we wanted a way for everyone to be able to go in and start creating forms and be able to be effective faster. So we designed the new UI with that intention in mind. Now, if you're experienced with SmartIQ, you may already be familiar with external events for e-signature. And this is where you can design your SmartIQ workflow, where we can wait for your OneSpan or your DocuSign signing ceremony to complete before we take an action. And this action can be something like sending an email, writing back to your system of record, or even calling from RESTful API. And we would do this before we move into the next stage in the process. What we've added now is the ability to call an additional SmartIQ form as an external event. And this will allow you to chain different SmartIQ processes together to give you a longer process story. So an example of this might be where you have a commercial onboarding application that you need to create, a commercial banking application. And as part of that process, you really have two separate SmartIQ forms. You might have a SmartIQ form to be able to create the application, and then a separate SmartIQ form that's your tax forms. They're separate SmartIQ forms because you have completely different people completing them, a different process for people to review them, but both of these forms needed to be completed before you can send out the welcome packet and other onboarding documents. So this external event will allow you to start the application process, then initiate the SmartIQ form for your tax forms, and then wait for those tax forms to be completed and signed before bringing the process back together and finishing it by sending out these welcome packets. And so how can you leverage these new features to help you identify your new use cases? One way to do that is to shift how you're thinking about your data collection. Who are the people who are going to be involved in the process, and what are the roles that they're going to play? And this is where we really want to hear from all of you, and we want to bring up our first poll question. And the poll question is, when you think of your forms or form communications, who is the primary point of contact responsible for collecting and submitting the information? Is it your customers, the end users, such as the policyholders, or individual as investors, patients, or insureds? Is it your CSRs who may be collecting information on behalf of the customers? or are they touched by a third party, such as an agent, broker, advisor, or adjusters? And we'll give you a minute to submit your answers. Looking forward to seeing how everybody responds.
How's it looking, Paula?
It looks like 50% are selecting the first option, where customers, some of the examples are policyholders, individual investors, and patients.
Okay. And then is it roughly evenly split in the other two?
Correct, Sally.
Okay,
Right.
that's interesting. I think that's going to be a good segue into what you guys are going to, what Gina and I will talk about here for the next 30 minutes or so. And that is, I mean, Gina, I think I'd be curious if that's sort of what you find as well when you start, especially first working with a company, that we tend to go to, well, it's the customer.
Yes. Yeah, I really think that most people think about the end user as being the customer, but what we're here to think about are all the other potential users or people who are going to be involved in the process for your collecting your data. And there's lots of options out there.
Awesome. Well, let's kind of get into the bulk of today's session and really take a step back. And the reason we set this slide up this way was to try and help all of us sort of get out of our day-to-day shoes of data collection and think about this as if we were putting together a play. Because there's a lot of parallels and similarities in terms of how you would identify a use case. And if someone walked up and said, I need you to put on a play, you'd be asking so many of the same questions. And we thought this might be kind of a more engaging way to look at it. But you know, as you think about this, and what we'll walk through each of these 5 steps is sort of first identifying what play you want to do. And once you do that, then you start to say, okay, well, if I'm doing this play, who are the actors that are going to be involved? Who is the cast? And then how am I going to get people to show up? How am I going to make sure people know that when to be here and that they can get in? You've got to pull off the production on the big opening night. You've got to have your props in place, your light people doing all their magic with light shows. And then you've got to have an ending. You know, that's sort of the most memorable part a lot of times. And SmartIQ is very similar in each of these instances, is that it's identifying the use case, really being aware of all the different personas involved in a business process and taking them into consideration, thinking about how people are going to be able to access these projects and these digital experiences. Do you have all the things in there that you want to make sure it's the best experience? And then how do you close the loop on it? So we'll start with choosing the story. And this is probably where Gina and I will spend the most time, because it is sort of the hardest part right at the beginning. And the first item here is really looking at data. And Gina, I don't know if you've got sort of some thoughts on looking at these processes with the highest NIGO.
Sure. And choosing a form that has the highest NIGO rate is probably the easiest way to identify a SmartIQ use case. And the good news is your company probably already has some metrics or some information that they maintain around this that will help you identify a good form. But some of the questions that you want to ask yourself is, why are these forms coming back with such high NIGO? Is it because some of the data is missing? In that case, SmartIQ can help by enforcing mandatory fields. Is it because the data that's being entered is being done correctly? So SmartIQ can help here by adding data validations that you can do at a field level. And you can set up all these data validations based upon your specific business requirements. And then also, is your customer just misunderstanding the instructions of how they're going to be completing the form? And this is where you have so much flexibility with SmartIQ, because it's your opportunity to expand past that physical piece of paper. Before, you were limited to just the physical sheet of paper and the instructions that you wanted to provide on that paper. Now you have the ability to tell a conversation. You can present the form with as much information and content to be able to help them complete it correctly. You can guide them through the questions, and you can do all this in a very visually pleasing manner, and making sure that all the information that they need to complete that form is just easily accessible to them.
Yeah,
So lots of options. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Gina, I didn't mean to cut you off. Because as you're talking, the other thing that I think comes up is, do people ever kind of say, I don't know my NIGO rates? I mean, is that, I don't know if that breakdown is 50-50, half people do, half don't. Or do most people tend to have that?
It's most people have an idea on which forms have the highest NIGO and some of the questions that they need to be able to validate. But it's also something, as you get going with your form within SmartIQ, you can make adjustments. So you can launch your SmartIQ form thinking you've accounted for and have a way to reduce your NIGO. But as you're getting more forms back, continue to look at it and evaluate, and you can always make tweaks and continue to improve that process.
And one of the other things that's come up, and then we'll kind of move on to the next thing, but one of the things that came up once at a roundtable, it was sort of said in jest, was, well, you know, we'll never get away from all the data cleanup. And so I think something to just note for the folks on the call today is, if you don't know where to find NIGO, or maybe that's a stumbling block to getting started, another way to ask the question is to talk to your IT teams and say, hey, who's doing our data cleanup for maybe claims or underwriting or agent onboarding? Who's doing that cleanup? And talking to them and saying, where are we doing the most data cleanup? Because that's really an indicator, to Gina's point, that not in good order data is coming in. And so that would be the opportunity for SmartIQ to sort of stop that ingestion of the invalid data and subsequently reducing the need for that data cleanup. So just another way to sort of to look at that if getting NIGO is challenging.
All right, and then another story or another question that you can take a look at is, do you have some forms that may be high volume, but they're not as complex? I think most people who are familiar with SmartIQ recognize that it's a really good tool to handle the high complexity documents. If you have a lot of really high complexity data that you're collecting, or a really sophisticated workflow. But don't forget about any of the processes that you may have in place that are equally as important, but maybe they don't have as much complexity around it. And these are really good use cases to start off with. For one, it's easier for your team to get going with a SmartIQ process that's a little bit easier to implement and really build up their level of proficiency before they're moving into something a little bit more complex. But forms that you can take a look at that may fit into this category, and some of the quick wins that our customers have shared with us is they have forms such as a risk profile questionnaire. And when you look at that form, it has less than 10 questions that are on it. But it's something that a financial advisor has to send out to their investors every year. They have to chase their investors to be able to complete, but it's important for them to get back. So this is one that might be a really good fit to implement within SmartIQ. Another good example that a customer shared with us is they have, for their auto insurance, they offer some good student discounts. And this requires their insureds to be able to submit each year a report card for their students showing that they still can get recognition for this discount. And this is something that they don't submit it, they're going to lose it on this policy, and it's going to cause their policy rates to increase. So each year the agents are having to reach out to their insureds and follow up with this information. Again, it's an easy SmartIQ form to be able to implement because there's not a lot of questions. And the process around it is still fairly simple, but you get to control so much of the conversation. And it allows you to communicate with your customer in a way where you can send out notifications that start off friendly and at the beginning, but they can increase as you go through the process if they're not returning it, and just let them know that there's some urgency around this request. So the main takeaway here is SmartIQ doesn't always have to be about a business process that is really complicated or sophisticated. There's lots of good use cases out there where we can really help you in terms of your business process.
Yeah, and I think, Gina, piggybacking on that, you know, I think about seasonal type use cases too, where it's not necessarily complex and it's really kind of problematic for a certain amount of time in a year. And the one that springs to mind for me is tax season for banks and financial institutions. So just that ease of being able to manage those documents digitally and ingest that influx of data that's not normally happening. It's all kind of set up so that when that time hits, it can all just come in digitally and accurately, and help sort of turn around any requests for additional documentation that may be needed. It kind of starts to all snowball. It can help shorten the window. You know more quickly that you need to get more information for, to process someone's tax filing or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another question that you can ask when you're trying to choose your story is, what forms or business processes generate the most calls into your customer call center? If you go and you talk to your customer center, they can probably tell you exactly which forms they get the most calls about, and maybe even the questions that stump the customer the most. And this is a really good starting point, just that question alone. But if you want to think a little bit broader here, we have one of our SmartIQ insurance customers that shared with us that their CSRs were having to spend a really large amount of time engaging with their agents, because the agents are trying to help their customers with a claim process, and they didn't have any visibility into where in the process they are. And this is where the SmartIQ can really help, because for each state in the workflow, SmartIQ can take an action. So has the information been sent to the insured for them to complete? Has the insured completed it and returned it? Is it within review process back within your company? And SmartIQ at each one of these states can take an action, such as sending an email update to anybody's involved within this claim process. We can write a status update back into your system of record. We can create a dashboard for your agents to be able to access, so they don't have to pick up the phone and call the call center to be able to get a status update. It's something that they can do independently. So it's not always just about the data collection. That's always important. But in addition, you want to be able to build a process that builds collaboration and insights for all of your stakeholders.
And I think too, Gina, as you were talking through that and we were sort of preparing for this, even in the example you used, because sometimes we do understand that it can be hard to get the answers to some of these questions, or again, it can kind of delay being able to take action. And another way to look at this question is usually the calls come in. Gina used the example of, people sort of wanting the status of a claim. Well, the status of a claim is probably an indicator of reimbursement. It's a financial, the customer, the end user is waiting to get money of some description. And so that can also be another way to think about, where do I want to start with a use case? What are the use cases that involve reimbursement to the end use customer? Because those are likely the ones that are generating calls in. Yes, they're asking for a status update, but it's the status on when they're getting the money reimbursed. And that applies, across a lot of industries as well.
Absolutely.
So this question is one, it's fairly straightforward, is anytime, if you're familiar with a business process that involves either a spreadsheet, so a lot of brokers or financial advisors, if they're bringing a book of business over or making big changes, they keep a lot of that information in a spreadsheet. Or they're sending out Word documents with macros. Whenever you kind of see those types of tools as part of a business process, or when you see or are aware of someone, or maybe it's two people entering the same information, maybe it's the first page of a form that's been used, but you know that that information is being manually entered into two different systems, those are really good indicators that SmartIQ could be a tool to help collect and automate the transfer of information in those processes. So this is one, again, it's not, these are fairly straightforward things, like I said, to find out, and they are a good indicator that this could be digitalized and automated with SmartIQ.
And then the next question that we have is, which one of your forms have the highest abandonment rates? And so do you have any forms that you are aware of that do get abandoned quite frequently and you're trying to find out why? Well, with SmartIQ, it has the natural ability to guide you through completing the form. It can provide all of the clear instructions. It can be a visually appealing form. And we also have the ability to save and resume your process. So this is obviously just a natural fit to be able to lower or eliminate any of these abandoned forms. But don't think of abandoned forms as just something that's been abandoned and lost. If you have a form that's been abandoned, it's really a great way for you to take a look at the process and try to fine tune it and improve on what's happening. And SmartIQ can happen here. Or can help here as well. So some of the things that you can do is, if you have a form that's been abandoned, instead of terminating that transaction, you can actually set up your workflow where this abandoned form gets sent to an individual or a team whose job is to review these abandoned forms and do some type of reach out campaign to them. You can also take a look at the information that we've collected around the form. You can look and see if the person who received the form originally, did they start on the form? Did they make some progress on it before they abandoned it? Or did they just receive it and never even take action? If they did start on the form, what are some of the key trends that you're looking at? Is there one question where you're seeing a drop-off rate? Is there, as you're looking at the analytics information, was there help information that they were accessing? Or did they come to a page where they were supposed to attach some information or involve someone else in the process and that wasn't happening? And you can use the information you've collected about this abandonment process to make some improvements. You can always go back to your SmartIQ form and make changes based upon this information that you've gathered. So just because it's in an abandoned form doesn't mean that you've lost some information. You can still get some great content around why a form was abandoned and use that to be able to make improvements.
All right, and I think this is the last one, the last kind of choosing the story question. Which processes, onboarding or servicing, have the longest outcomes? We know that a lot of our customers, even employees or agents, are expecting pretty fast turnarounds. So when you're aware of something, a reimbursement or just an approval taking 30 or more days, that's an opportunity to sort of get people involved and ask the questions, kind of, why is this taking so long? Is it that up front there's a lot of callback to get the data right? Is it that the approvals take a long time because if someone's out of the office, it's holding it up? Really starting to look closely at where the bottlenecks are, and then looking at, we can automate that in SmartIQ and having that information ahead of time, we can design a project so that it circumvents and prevents any kind of bottlenecks like that, and it can shrink that window down dramatically. So that's just another way to look at identifying a use case. So now, sort of moving on, once you've decided what do you want to do, there's really 2 main points on this slide. And the first is visibility in terms of who's going to benefit. Because kind of going back to that poll, we know that consumers at the end of the day are going to benefit from a variety of things that we've sort of talked about through those questions. But one of the reasons I really appreciate this slide is because it's a great visual to show the volume of people involved in these business processes that are also impacted. Now, whether they're impacted, Gina brought up the agents looking for a status. So maybe they're impacted in terms of not being able to deliver the experience that they'd like to be able to deliver. Or maybe they're impacted because it is the financial advisor doing something on behalf of a client, and they put the information in incorrectly and have to go back to the client. That's not an experience they really want to go through. So this really gives a visual on all the different types of roles that are impacted by forms, and subsequently by digitalizing and automating them and making those experiences better. But the second main point on this slide too is these really should be collaborative efforts. So as you're identifying the use case, once you've settled on this play, you want to make sure that you're getting the insights from the business analysts and people involved with these projects today, because they are the ones that really do have that day-to-day experience on where improvement could have the most impact. So really encouraging you to get that input, and also look across the organization, because a lot of these processes, while they're not identical from one line of business to another, it's almost like a Venn diagram. There can be, and is in many instances, a lot of overlap. So if you're saying to a peer in a different part of the business, look, I'm looking at digitalizing some projects and kind of dipping my toe in over here, but as we do this, I really think this is something that would impact where you guys are collecting data over here, and you can start to have these bigger conversations and maybe get engaged with a center of excellence or an innovation center that you may have within your organization. And now we want to take a quick look at how do we get people engaged. So if we've got a use case, we've got a business process, we know everyone that's going to be impacted and involved in the process. How do we make sure they can get to it? And I think one of the big takeaways on this slide is really that today these all exist. So there is self-service driven data collection. So that's someone downloading a form maybe off a website and filling it out and scanning it back in. There's event driven. This is something where something happened that triggered data that then that is what triggered requests for information perhaps from a customer. And then there's inbound driven. So the customer actually calls in and they speak with that customer service representative, and the process is initiated that way. And in many organizations, all of these on-ramps exist, and they exist separately and independently. And what we really want to rethink using SmartIQ is we want one of the big efficiency gains is saying these are all of the experiences will be the same. And as we're working to architect that solution, as your teams are working to architect the solution, making sure there's an awareness that anyone can come in any one of these ways to a single process. These don't have to be looked at individually or independently. We can create one process that can be accessed really in any way you need it to be.
Yep. And Sally, I know you said that, but I think it's really important to emphasize when you're designing your SmartIQ form, you're just creating one SmartIQ form. You're just maintaining one SmartIQ form that supports all these different methods for having someone come in and access that form.
Yeah.
So very efficient approach that's going to give you some options. All right. So now moving into the production. This is who's going to be part of your crew and who are your stagehands. So, and this is a very critical step in the process, and you want to make sure that you get the right people involved in your production early on. Some of the key roles that you want to make sure that you're completing are who are you assigning to be your SmartIQ form designers? You want to make sure that you have someone involved who's going to take ownership and responsibility for maintaining and creating your SmartIQ forms. And this is true even if you're having our professional services team do the implementation or you're working with one of our partners, because having some base knowledge will really help you design an effective form if you understand the product. And there's so many easy things that you can make and tweak on your SmartIQ forms that sometimes it's just a little bit faster to be able to go in and make some of these changes yourself. You also want to identify who is going to be your business analyst. This is someone who knows the process and they're familiar with the forms that are being completed right now, and they can come to you and share some of their ideas on ways that you can improve. And by having this BA person be involved at the very beginning, they can help you not only with this process, but they can help you identify other use cases. And they can also help and go and evangelize your SmartIQ forms to your other teams and also brainstorm with other team members and share information to come up with some additional use cases. Then you also want your QA team, people who are familiar with your forms and what the output is supposed to look like, and they can always help you with any of your testing, especially around the times when we're introducing new features. So our recommendation is always to have these people assigned to your projects earlier. And as you're looking through these different roles and you're seeing them scroll through your screens, I know we have a lot of SmartComm customers in the audience. You'll probably recognize that there's a lot of overlap between the roles for your SmartComm teams and your SmartIQ teams. And that's really important because you can use a lot of the same resources in both of these roles, which is also going to bring some efficiency to your side. And now moving on to the ending. So what do you have as your grand finale or your curtain close? How are you going to end your play? And the good news is that you have a lot of options. The most common one is people tend to generate a document and they go through a signing ceremony. We do have the integrations with e-signature providers such as OneSpan. But we also have people asking us about options where they don't have to incur an e-signature platform cost anytime they need to capture a signature, especially when we have signatures that don't necessarily need to be a legally binding signature. And SmartIQ does offer the ability to sign on glass. It also offers you the ability to force someone to accept an acknowledgement before they can proceed and submit a SmartIQ form. So there's other options than just using an e-signature provider. We also have the ability to take all this data and these documents that you collected and take action on them and do something with them. One of the options we have within SmartIQ is called a form summary. And this is where we take all of the answers that we've collected during the SmartIQ process, so all the data that we've collected, and we can automatically generate a Word document or a PDF or a JSON file of the data. And then you can use this to pass into any of your other systems. You can also come up with your own data schemas, but you can pass this either through one of our REST APIs into any of your systems, or we do offer connectors to some of the common applications such as Salesforce, SharePoint, or into a CSM. And then we also have the ability for communications. One of the key ones, especially if you're a SmartComm customer, is we do have the ability to seamlessly integrate between SmartIQ and SmartCom. So SmartIQ can be the front end for all the data capture, and then this data can be passed into SmartCom, and you can take advantage of your templates, your rules, any of your output settings that you and distribution settings that you've already configured within SmartCom. And your emails and your communication that you're sending out can be branded, so it's going to have the same look and feel for your company. So lots of great options for how you want to be able to plan your big curtain close.
Thanks, Gina. So just to kind of summarize, in terms of identifying use cases, what's the Cliff Notes version? So the first question is really, what problem do I want to solve, or where do I want to have the most impact? After you've sort of settled on that, you kind of look around and ask, who are all the different people involved as well? You know, the business analyst is almost always one, but who else is involved? And getting input and collaborating with some of the stakeholders and people that are interacting in these processes today. How do you want people to be able to access an experience? What are any supplemental steps, or they're supplemental today, but what are maybe some of those periphery steps that we could weave into actually this end-to-end digital experience? So rather than having, submitting additional documentation as a separate step based on where someone is, or some responses they've given, that can be woven directly into the experience the first time. So it's that kind of right the first time ingestion. And then how do I want to close the loop? How do I want this experience to end? And that's really, as Gina was talking about, that's really based on the business case and where the information needs to go and who needs to get that. So just to give a quick snapshot, if you're kind of walking away and saying this is helpful, I'd still sort of like to know what are some specific use cases. And you'll get a copy of this after today's webinar. This is a snapshot of some of the most common use cases we see in our core verticals where we work the most. The ones that are in yellow are the ones that are currently in the form sample library. This is where I would love, if anyone taking a look at this list, if there were other use cases that you would love to see in here that you think would be helpful, please put those in the chat. Gina and I will be looking at those and talking to our product team on appetite and resources to build new projects. They've got a long list now, but we'd really rather build things that we know customers would use and are asking for than just do what we're picking. So by all means, please put your ideas in the chat and we'll take a look at those. Also, as you're doing that, a quick note as well, there will be a survey at the end of today's session, and that's a survey where if you would like to speak with someone one-on-one and kind of, you could go through some of the questions that we've talked about today. You could talk about some of the use cases on the previous slide. But if you would like to kind of have a one-on-one deeper discussion based on your role, where you are in the business, where you potentially see a fit, and you just want to bounce ideas around, there will be a survey at the end where you're welcome to share your information, and we will get a one-on-one discovery session scheduled with you in the weeks ahead.
And as you get started with your SmartIQ use cases, we want to make sure that you're aware of all the resources that are available to help you. Sally mentioned the discovery sessions. We would love to brainstorm with you. If you would like that one-on-one, please reach out. But we also have some other ways for you to get more information on SmartIQ. We have a customer community that you can log in to look at our product roadmap and learn about the new features and any maintenance releases that are there. We have our Knowledge Hub, which is our self-help portal for all the features on SmartIQ. And we have our support team who's always there to help answer your questions. And we put links to all of these that will be available to you once we share this deck. In addition, we have a few other resources that are available. Our professional services team, we're always here to help you if you want us to implement one of your SmartIQ forms. We can also provide mentoring services to you and your team as you're getting up and getting started. And then we also have a large network of partners that we work with. So if you have a large volume of SmartIQ forms, we can introduce you to some of our partners and connect you with some of our integrators to be able to get you started. So no matter what you need assistance with, we are here to help.
So if anyone's got any questions, you're welcome to put those in the chat. I know we're a few minutes past where we hope to be. We're happy to take questions, and like I said, you'll receive a survey at the end of this call if you'd like to speak with someone just kind of one-on-one about your specific use cases. We would love that opportunity. All right, Paula,
Great.
I think we're good.
We are. Thank you, ladies. I want to take a moment to just thank Sally and Gina for sharing this information with us today as part of the Get Smarter webinar series. But I also want to thank you, our audience, for spending time with us today. We know that you have a busy schedule. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.